So what does exploring look like when we're talking about understanding how the body works? I speak of it in two ways. One, in your body, exploring your body as the client, as the athlete, just as the human, understanding how things feel and what your body awareness is telling you and how to improve your body awareness, right? We're feeling beings. We are predominantly sensory beings. And we need to learn how to trust that in order to trust the wisdom of our body. The problem is a lot of times we have not relied on how we feel because we might not like what we feel. And you kind of get focused on the pain or the immobility, right? And so it's sort of recultivating that, where am I starting and what am I feeling? And then doing something to change that, whether it be a movement or manual therapy or a food or even like a meditation or a thought process or journaling, and then checking back in and seeing what's changed. And noticing what's changed is important. And then also asking yourself, do you like that change? Do you want to keep that change? That is how you teach yourself what is right for you in the moment, right? That is how you trust that. Sort of, if somebody told you that you should squat a certain way, well, if you pay attention to how you feel before, during, and after, and you follow their directions and it never really feels great in your body, it's not correct, right? So changing how you move to then create an experience that feels better to you or feels good to you is so important. Then you realize that maybe the rules that practitioner are giving you are not for you, right? So this process of trusting what your body has to say and then allowing yourself to make changes outside of the general rules that have been given to you from the experts is how we explore, right? Like permission to explore that, right? Permission to know that your body ultimately is the deciding factor on what is right or not. Our organism is put together in a way that it self-organizes, right? And so when we don't trust it, we're not trusting that really great intelligence that is innate within us, right? And ultimately, we're sensory beings. Our motor output, right, our movement is only going to be as good as our sensory experience. So improving our sensory experience, paying attention to what we feel before, during, and after, actually ends up giving us a better output over time. When we ignore how we feel because we put our trust in someone else, it actually decreases the sensory information coming in and then makes the output less desirable. So how does exploring look as a clinician? So what exploring looks like as a clinician is a similar approach to that. It's number one, fundamentally understanding that the rules that you are following from a biomechanical standpoint to help somebody move better, understanding that they might not be true, right? And so using them as a sort of framework to provide context, but not fact, right? And always being curious about what changes the body, right? So doing an evaluation, and a very specific and a precise one, right? So an example of like hip mobility, like very precisely moving someone's hip into hip mobility to see when exactly their pelvis starts to move. Then doing an intervention, whether it be manual therapy or movement, and then rechecking and being curious about why that changed. Part of this exploration and curiosity when it comes to being a clinician really relies upon you as a clinician being able to feel and see with your eyes what is going on in your client's body, right? If you don't have the capacity to really feel and see what's going on in their body, then you miss this. You miss the opportunity to then explore what happens when you're providing a cue or providing a manual therapy or providing whatever intervention you choose, right? And in order to pay attention best and feel what's going on in their body best, you have to have cultivated that skill within your own body. It's very hard for you to see with your eyes a subtle movement of the pelvis if you've never felt that subtle movement in your pelvis. It really is intrinsically linked. The ability to see and feel it in someone else's body comes from the ability to feel it in your own body, right? So this is why the mentorship is set up that way. You have to be willing to do the work in your own body if you're going to be a better clinician and do better for your patients and clients. So here's a more concrete example. The other day I posted this video about the spiral line anatomy train, which is a fascial line that connects your feet and low legs to throughout your body all the way up to the side of the head. I presented how you could do a self-massage technique on the dorsiflexion muscles of your low leg and feel an effect within your breathing pattern and the mobility of your rib cage. And it blew some people's minds, which is cool. That's what I want. And when I'm teaching athletes regen, that's what I want them to see, is how everything's connected and how if you only have 5 minutes and can work on your calves, you can actually have a pretty big change in the rest of the body, or vice versa. But I also want to preface, I didn't learn that in a book somewhere. I learned that because I learned the anatomy trains, and I thought about how that connection was in the body. And then I was like, I wonder how it feels in my body at one end of the fascial line when I do treatment on the other end, right? Or when I do an exercise on the other end. And so what I did was I sat down and I paid attention to a functional movement that the spiral line was involved in. And then I did the intervention and I rechecked. And then I was like, wow, there's a change. So then that became a tool that I could use with my athletes, right? But had I never taken the time to feel it in my own body, and had I never taken the time to do all this work in my own body to create that trust, that knowing that when my body feels it, that's true, then it wouldn't be a useful tool for me to use for my clients, for my athletes, right? So this is what I mean by exploring and why it's important to explore, because it takes you back to that primal connection that we have a ton of wisdom within our cells. 6 billion years of being a human being. That's how much intelligence is embedded in our cells. The only way to tap into that wisdom is to start paying attention to how you feel. This also helps you in a sense that when your athletes then tell you how they are feeling, or what a exercise feels like, or what an injury feels like, you have this sort of resource in your brain of like all of these sensations and feelings that are created with different interventions. So then you could easily be like, oh, you know what? I've felt that before and this helped me. So let's try it in them and see what changes. Or, oh, I've felt that feeling before and that was when my nerves were irritated. Or, oh, I've felt that feeling before and that's when my gut gets upset. Because people who are not used to trusting and feeling in their bodies, they have a hard time describing and figuring out exactly what they're feeling. And so the better you can get in actually feeling in your body, the better you can be at helping your clients interpret what is going on and hopefully provide an intervention to help them.